The Whispering Ones. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, where the mist clings to the trees like grasping fingers, lies the abandoned town of Black Hollow. No one remembers when it was last inhabited, but travelers speak of strange whispers carried on the wind, of shadows that move when no one is there. Lena and her friends, Mark, Jody, and Chris, were amateur paranormal investigators, always chasing the next big scare for their YouTube channel. When they heard about Black Hollow, they knew they had to explore it. Armed with cameras, flashlights, and a drone, they set off, eager to uncover the truth behind the ghost stories. The road to Black Hollow was almost impassable, overgrown with gnarled roots and surrounded by towering trees that seemed to lean in, as if listening. By the time they arrived, dusk had begun to settle, painting the abandoned town in eerie shades of orange and grey. The first thing they noticed was the silence. No birds, no insects, just an oppressive stillness. The town consisted of a few crumbling buildings, a general store with shattered windows, a church with its doors slightly ajar, and a row of houses, their wooden frames rotting from age. Mark set up the drone while Jody started recording. "Welcome to Black Hollow," she whispered into the camera. "A town lost to time, where no one dares to stay after dark." As they explored, Lena felt a strange pressure in the air, like a storm was coming. Then she heard it, a whisper. It was faint, almost like a sigh, but unmistakable. "Did you hear that?" she asked, spinning around. "Hear what?" Chris frowned. "A voice, like someone whispering right behind me." Jody smirked. "Getting spooked already?" But Lena wasn't convinced. The feeling in her gut told her something was wrong. As they continued, they found an old house at the edge of town, its door barely hanging on its hinges. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Faded family portraits lined the walls, their faces barely visible beneath the grime. Mark was in the middle of filming when the whispering returned. This time, they all heard it. A chorus of voices, soft and distant, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The words were unintelligible, but the tone carried a warning. Jody laughed nervously. "Okay, that's creepy. Someone playing a trick on us?" Lena shook her head. "There's no one else here." Then the whispering stopped. For a moment they stood in silence, the only sound their own breathing. Then Mark gasped, "Lena, move." She turned just as a dark shape rushed toward her from the corner of the room. Cold fingers grazed her arm before she stumbled backward, falling against the wall. Chris shone his flashlight, but there was nothing there. "Okay, we're leaving," Mark said, his voice shaking. They bolted from the house, but as they stepped outside, the whispers returned, now urgent, desperate. "Run." The word was clear this time, and it sent ice through Lena's veins. Jody screamed, "Look!" Down the street, the shadows shifted. Dark figures, featureless and tall, emerged from the mist, their movements jerky, unnatural. They whispered in unison, a terrible, rising chorus. Mark grabbed his camera and ran. They sprinted for the car, the whispering growing louder, surrounding them. The air turned frigid, their breath visible in the dim light. As they reached the vehicle, Lena dared to glance back. The figures had stopped at the town's edge, their whispering now a low hum, as if waiting. The moment they crossed the threshold of Black Hollow, the sound ceased. They didn't stop driving until they reached civilization. When they checked the footage, their stomachs turned. The whispering had been recorded clearly, but worse was the final shot from Mark's camera. As they ran, one of the figures had turned its head, twisting too far, as if its neck were broken, and smiled. They never went back. But sometimes when Lena is alone at night, she swears she still hears the whispering. The haunting of Blackwood Manor. Deep in the woods, far from any town, stood Blackwood Manor, a crumbling Victorian mansion whispered about in hushed tones. For decades it had been abandoned, its towering spires clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. The few who dared venture near spoke of strange lights flickering in the windows, ghastly whispers on the wind, and the chilling sensation of unseen eyes watching. But Daniel Monroe, a young urban explorer with a thirst for uncovering the unknown, was undeterred. His YouTube channel thrived on paranormal investigations, and Blackwood Manor was the perfect opportunity for his next video. Armed with his camera, flashlight, and a backpack filled with ghost hunting equipment, Daniel arrived at the overgrown iron gate just as the sun dipped below the horizon. A cold wind howled through the trees, sending leaves swirling around his feet. He pushed open the rusted gate, wincing as the hinges shrieked in protest. The manor loomed before him, its once grand facade now a graveyard of shattered windows and ivy-choked walls. The front door, though heavy with rot, swung open with eerie ease at his touch. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Moonlight slanted through cracked stained glass windows, casting warped colors on the floor. Daniel whispered into his camera, documenting his every move. He explored the ground floor first, the grand staircase, the abandoned dining hall, the library where books lay scattered as if someone had fled in a hurry. Whispers, faint and unintelligible, teased his ears. At first he dismissed them as the wind, but as he climbed the stairs they grew clearer. "Leave." Daniel froze. The voice was unmistakably real, and it came from the darkness above. He swallowed hard but pressed on. At the end of the second-floor hallway, he found a room untouched by time, a child's bedroom. The rocking chair near the window swayed gently, though the air was still. A single doll sat on the bed, its porcelain face cracked, its glass eyes dull. Daniel's breath hitched. The room felt occupied. He raised his camera, but before he could press record, the door behind him slammed shut. Then the giggling started. Soft at first, then louder. A child's laughter, high-pitched and unnatural. The rocking chair creaked faster, as if something unseen sat in it, rocking back and forth. Daniel reached for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The laughter grew closer. He turned and the doll was no longer on the bed. It was on the floor, right at his feet. Daniel stumbled back, heart hammering. He kicked the doll away, and as it tumbled across the floor, the laughter stopped. The silence was worse. Then the whisper returned, louder, right in his ear. "Get out!" The room went deathly cold. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps. He pounded on the door, desperate, until it suddenly swung open on its own. Without hesitation, he bolted down the hall, down the stairs, and out of the house, never once looking back. Only when he reached his car did he dare glance at his camera. The footage had stopped recording in the bedroom, but the audio remained intact. As he pressed play, he heard his own frantic breathing, followed by the unmistakable sound of tiny feet running across the floor. And then a child's voice, clear and chilling. "See you soon." Daniel never returned to Blackwood Manor. But every night, as he lay in bed, he heard the distant sound of laughter.